you here because we say you were in the Mafia. We think John Gotti, that's the first name that comes up. We think John Gotti is here on the ladder. Where were you?
Well, most of my life, we were all equals back in the 60s and the 70s. John Gotti packaged himself, became a Hollywood gangster, and took over a family. We were just, everybody was just kind of equal in the streets in the 70s. In 77, they initiated new members into the mob, and he was in prison at that time. He saved himself. They saved him a spot. He became a made member, became a captain, whacked out Castellano, killed him, and became the boss of the Gambino family. So, you know, at that point in time, they wanted me to be with them, to officially take a position with the family and take a vow, you know.
What were some of the things you were asked to do, and I won't say forced, because I guess you did them willingly, when you were with the Mafia?
Well, basically, what you see on television is a real accurate portrayal of Wise Guy, the crime that we did. Hijack trucks right here in New Jersey. I mean, for years, rob banks, beat people up, break their legs and arms, put them in the hospital. Everything you see, we did. I mean, I lived that life. That's all I did. I was a professional criminal. I mean, that's all I did.
The most important witness since Valachi, does he really have that much to tell about John Gotti?
Well, I can't answer that question to an exactitude because there's an upcoming trial, and I don't think it'd be fair to...
Did he tell you any new information?
Well, I don't know what's new and what isn't. He told me a lot of things about a lot of things. So, yes, he's told me a lot of things about Gotti. He grew up with Gotti.
We have a phone call. Yes, you're on the air.
Hi, Matt. This is Mimi from Stroudsburg.
Hi, what's your question?
This question is directed to Sal. I'd like to know, as a parent, and being that he has a son, and when orders came down for him to kill somebody else's father, how did he feel doing that? You know, taking away the father of some other child.
Good question, Sal.
That's a tough question to answer because I'm not going to admit to a crime that has no statute of limitations. But I will tell you this. When you're in the life, sometimes you just have to follow some type of orders that are just either going to be you or the next guy. And when you're in that life, you justify in your own mind what you're doing. And if you say, listen, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Before they could be induced into a Mafia family, one achievement was required of new entrants.
You must go out there and kill someone, and that killing must be verified by a member or whoever's endorsing you for that particular crime family. Occasionally, some of the men were actually, you know, killed for dealing drugs. You know, it was like, it wasn't so much the drug dealing, it was like disobeying the order from the head of the family.
What was Gotti charged with in that case?
Excuse me?
What was Gotti charged with in the case that you tried to make?
He was charged with the famous RICO Act. He was charged with Racketeering, Influence, Corruption, Organization Act. And ironically enough, I had worked with the FBI, and I still do. I do seminars with the FBI today. And I said to Diane Jackalone, who was put in a tough spot because the FBI did not have the case against John Gotti.
The prosecutor in that case.
The prosecutor, Diane Jackalone. I said, Diane, you know, this guy's got the capability. He's quite astute, clever, and shrewd to fix this case. And they laughed. And sure enough, like last year, if you remember Gene Gotti's case, they stopped it. It was a mistrial. Why? Because he was bribing the jury.
But they ultimately got Gene.
Yeah, and I think there's no question in my mind that John fixed that case.
Okay, I want that your co-author here, Nick Taylor, is John Gotti. Okay, Nick, what did John do to let Sal know that he was displeased with his testimony?
What John Gotti did was, in a position to do it, out of sight of the judge, put his hand under the witness table and pointed his finger at Sal and pulled the trigger. That's a fairly clear message, don't you think?
And right about that time, I met a guy. Some of you may have heard of him. You know, some of you might not have heard of him. His name was Gotti, John Gotti. Recently, he just died a few months ago. We were kind of friends in the 60s and 70s, and just like you're friends with somebody in this university, and then 15 to 20 years from now, that person goes on as a U.S. senator, and then the next thing you know, that person may be running for president, or maybe it's an actor out in Hollywood up for an Academy Award. That's how close I was to this guy, John Gotti, and he had some special talents. He was a great salesperson. He had charisma. I mean, it just oozed off of this guy. We're talking passion. I'm talking charisma. I'm talking like Tiger Woods passion. I mean, you know, you could see it on Tiger, or you could see it on Magic. And John Gotti had this great charisma, and he talked about building this mob that was like a super mob. This was in the early 70s. Nobody even knew his name.
But for 3 months, we've been tracking him and trying to find out about John Gotti through some of the people who are closest to him. And they're a rather charming group.
What you see is not what you get. from John Gotti. You're seeing somebody who projects this persona of a loving type of a family guy, even in his own neighborhood. But this is a violent individual, and make no mistake, this man has the capability of killing people. I mean, at a finger. He moves his finger and somebody's dead in New York. I mean, he's a Patton. He's a general Patton in the mob.
But before that, Sal and John shared both the life of crime and the language of the street.
Guys get up in the morning, they go to the club, Raven Night, Bergen, whatever club. There's clubs all over New York City. And so you're in there dealing with all thieves and hoods and murderers and drug dealers. And you work your connections and you work your contacts to the best that you can. I mean, we're not talking about a bunch of rocket scientists. He deals with dum-dums, idiots, and dodos, and they are drawn, they are attracted. They have an affinity for John Gotti because he is everything they can't be.
Sal Polisi is a street guy, a guy who's been a criminal majority of the time of his life. Does he know John Gotti? Yes. Does he know John Gotti almost to an intimate situation? Yeah, I would say intimately he knows a lot about John Gotti.
John Gotti, hijacking, robbery, burglary, extortion, murder, loan sharking, intimidation. That's not a crime, but he's not been arrested for drug dealing, but he's involved in drug dealing. He's involved in numbers. He's involved in union shakedowns. He's involved in extortion. He's involved in every crime known to man.